Hello and welcome. You're watching Republic Business. This is Rajat Mishra. Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman is going to announce the Union Budget on 23rd of July and the budget countdown has just begun. There are reports that the budget is likely to be just beyond the fiscal numbers and is likely to make an overarching statement about the government policy towards achieving its target of 2047 to make India a developed economy. To understand and to know more about it, we are joined in by a very special guest, economist and a professor, Lekha S Chakraborty, who is a professor at National Institute of Public Finance and Policy. Thank you, Dr. Lekha Chakraborty, for joining us and speaking to Republic Business. The first question that I want to ask you is, there is expectation that this time budget is likely to go beyond just the fiscal numbers and is going to make an overarching statement about the government's economic policy. What is your take on this? Do you think that in this budget, government is going to make an overarching statement as far as their economic policy is concerned?
We have to accept the fact that the coalition government is there. The states have already raised their voice to getting the special category status. So we should not forget that it's a coalition government. And what is the space they have to go ahead with economic reforms? That political economic question is very relevant because they can't pitch it just like the last time, the economic reforms like demonetization and all, or any similar policies just like that, because it's a coalition government. Right. And regarding the growth, of course, it is promising, and we have downward risk from the global poly crisis.
Right. Also, since you talked about that this is a coalition government, and you also highlighted that there are several demands from the state side as well. And we also know that Andhra Pradesh and Bihar are scouting for special packages and status. Do you think that those demands put forward by these states is reasonable in the backdrop of the fiscal headroom that we have?
The macroeconomic uncertainties are there. And the center and the states, they are equally facing these macroeconomic uncertainties. And that's affecting the fiscal space of the states. So we need to tackle that issue from the states related to the fiscal space. But if you ask me, if the special category state, that status is the answer to this, my response is no. Instead of giving special category status to Bihar, Andhra Pradesh, and now Orissa is also coming forward because of the natural calamities and, constrained fiscal space. But we can't, entertain the demands from the states specifically or individually. What we can do is with, the 16th Finance Commission, the tax transfer devolution, if it can be increased from 41% to around 50%, I should say, then these problems can be tackled related to the fiscal space of the states. Otherwise, if we start responding to the special category status from Andhra Pradesh, Bihar, Orissa, and we don't know how many states will come forward, because fiscal constraint space is, that's real, and there are macroeconomic uncertainties, but the answer is definitely not by giving the states SES, but to increase the tax devolution magnitude. That's exactly what 14th Finance Commission has done. They had increased the devolution from 31 to 42% instead of treating the states in SES.
Right. And also, let's talk about some macros, Professor Chakraborty. We also know that this time there are many reports and various agencies saying that government is going to stick to its fiscal consolidation path. In interim budget, the fiscal deficit target was pegged at 5.1%. Some people are saying that it will go down to 4.9% in this budget. What is your sense saying?
Well, government will not deviate from the fiscal consolidation path, because it will affect the investors' confidence and the rating. So that glide path towards 4.5 by 25-26, that's real. We have a fiscal consolidation glide path. So you're right. We will peg the fiscal deficit around 5% this year because we need to get it to 4.5%. But the path to the fiscal consolidation, if it happens through, cut down the spending rather than increasing the tax buoyancy, that affects the quality of fiscal consolidation. Because right now, the narrative is that we have high fiscal deficit and high debt, but we tied it to the capex spending.
Right, right. Also, there is a report from the side of SBI Research in which they said that it's all right for the government to go for fiscal consolidation, but they should not target the fiscal consolidation beyond 20 basis points, otherwise it will affect the growth. Do you think the same, that we should prioritize fiscal consolidation to a certain extent, not at the cost of growth, sustainable growth?
Absolutely. You said it. If we do a severe fiscal consolidation, that affects growth recovery process. So for a moment, we should believe that this timely deficit is good. We must believe that, this timely deficit is good because it will help our capex formation and in turn the economic recovery process. And if you look at the growth numbers, it's capex led, it's investment led. So we can't do anything with a severe fiscal consolidation right now because it will definitely affect the growth recovery process. And interest rate, on the other hand, it remained high. It is 6.5. So when monetary policy is focusing on price stability, fiscal policy needs to be accommodative with a little bit of deficits.
Right. And also, Professor Chakraborty, I just want you to draw your attention towards capex, because we know that capital expenditure that was allocated last time was 11.1 lakh crore. There is expectation this time that it will go, or it will be raised by 20% to 11.7 lakh crores. Some people are saying, some experts are saying 11.8 lakh crores. What is your sense? That's number one. Second, do you think that this kind of record capex allocation is sustainable in a long run?
This is the economic path forward, the capex formation. Of course, when I say capex, it's both physical and social infrastructure, because infrastructure investment has multiplier effects on the economy. So we can't take a step back from the capex formation at all. And the sustainability, if you're asking me about the fiscal sustainability, we need to look into the cost of the credit and the growth of the economy. And if the cost of the credit is lower than the growth of economy, then we are growing out of the debt or growing out of, all this financing pattern of deficit using a lot of bond financing. So I should say that we are sustainable, we are fiscally sustainable. There is no rollover risk because the debt maturity pattern, if you look into, it's all elongated, it's all long run. So we are on robust growth path with the debt maturity pattern of our debt, elongated. So there is no rollover risk. So why should not, we attempt that capex path, because a sudden, withdrawal from that capex path affect growth recovery process.
Right. Right. And also, we have been seeing this phenomenon, the tax buoyancy is something which has been aiding fiscal consolidation and helping fiscal consolidation since last many years. Do you think the tax buoyancy to remain sustainable the way it has been? And do you think that it will go on aiding the fiscal consolidation?
Oh, thank you for asking me that, because if the tax buoyancy path is a real path to fiscal consolidation, I'm happy about it, because we don't have to do the expenditure cut. But tax buoyancy is responsiveness of your taxes to the increase in the growth recovery process. And of course, it is about unity, it's about one. So the taxes are buoyant. And the way we look at the tax buoyancy is, also from the perspective of fiscal marksmanship. What we anticipated or projected as, the taxes which we are going to collect in this year and the revised estimates. And there's a good news over there. But we can't say that, whether that is a realistic projection or whether they have done a suboptimal projection so that the RE looked better than BE. But of course, the taxes are buoyant. And if the taxes are not buoyant, the only alternative is disinvestment proceeds. But you know the story that the fiscal marksmanship, that's a deviation between the budget estimates and the revised estimates for the disinvestment proceeds. That fiscal marksmanship is not perfect for the fiscal proceeds from the disinvestment. So we are hopeful about it. Otherwise, the debt or the deficit financing is the only way out.
Okay. And also, one trend that we have been witnessing, the government has been pegging divestment targets every budget. And I think this is the fourth or the fifth consecutive year in which we have missed our divestment target. Do you think that, and there are reports suggesting that this year the government may not come with a divestment target going forward, or even if they come up with the divestment target, that will be pegged at a very low level. What is your sense about the divestment, and why we have not been able to meet the divestment targets over the long period of time?
Well, I do not have any specific information about why disinvestment failed over the years. But Tuhin, the secretary of DPAM, he mentioned that the divestment is a process. It's more than a product. But turning it into fiscal proceeds, that requires time. But that process is very sincere, and we don't know, because it is not just about the fiscal proceeds, it's also about the dynamics of labor market, the way we price it. So there are many elements to this dynamics of disinvestment. So projecting disinvestment as a source of revenue, that I think the government will be very realistic this time. You have said it, because we missed the targets like anything. And if we project disinvestment proceeds very high this year, and if you don't get it, we don't have that fiscal space, and that fiscal space will be affected for the expenditure design. That sudden shrinkage in the fiscal space, that affects our expenditure design. So I think the government will be very realistic in projecting the disinvestment this year.
Right, right. And also, we know that the budget is being presented at a juncture when the government we have is a coalition government. We have a very good growth prospect for our country, but there are certain geopolitical uncertainties hovering around us. In that backdrop, what, according to you, should be the things that the government should immediately address in this budget? You can just tell us 2-3 things that should be immediately addressed in this budget. What should be the priority of the government?
Absolutely. The poly crisis you mentioned about the climate crisis, the global debt crisis, the energy crisis, and of course the supply chain disruptions because of water, whether it's Suez Canal, whether it's Red Sea, we are taking it through the, Cape of Good Hope. So it's affecting the supply side, the energy, volatility. So given all these things, the first thing is that the fiscal transition and the energy transition, that should move together. So the policies related to the climate resilient, the public policies, that should be given priority. If you look into the stability reports, the financial stability reports of RBI, the climate change crisis is appearing as one of the important or the significant risk and uncertainty, parameter. So we should focus on the climate, and we should focus on the climate responsive budgeting and ecological fiscal transfer. That's of prime importance. Then second is the growth per se will not cut ice, the human capital formation. So that focus on social infrastructure is very important. And given the mounting global inflation, the price stability objective of RBI by keeping the interest rate high is not doing the good job, or it's only having the partial outcomes. So we need to have policies related to helping the people from the inflation crisis. And inequality is widening. So the government acting as an employer of last resort is very crucial over here, rather than focusing on UBI. Because UBI is only a coping up mechanism, the universal basic income. So the employer of last resort policies government should be focusing upon in this budget.
Right. And what is the biggest worry when you look at the global economy and the Indian economy? What are the big worries that you have when you look around the economies across the world, and you also look around the Indian economy? What are the big worries that you have?
Absolutely. As I said, this poly crisis is real from the geopolitical uncertainties. But I must add one more point to it. That is, the Fed Reserve of US, that's in a hawkish mode. But of course, they have done a pause in the rates. But they clearly mention that it's only a pause but not the peak rate. So when one central bank, the Fed, is increasing the interest rates like anything or keeping the interest rate very high, that's inducing a kind of interest rate defense from the emerging world. We are also keeping the interest rate very high, otherwise there will be capital flight, because the hot money is fickle and that goes to the country where the interest rate is higher. So the interest rate defense, that's very crucial at this moment, because capital controls or RBI intervening in the forex market is not working very well. So how we do the interest rate management is very crucial. And often economists suggest that we should keep the fiscal deficit under control because that affects interest rate management. But fiscal deficit is not the villain behind the interest rate management right now. So the fiscal policy needs to be remain accommodative, and interest rate management, we need to do the interest rate defense because the Western world is keeping interest rates high. Otherwise, we will have the negative interest rate quadrant. So, that fiscal and monetary policy coordination is very crucial for sustaining the economic growth.
Thank you, Professor Chakraborty, for sparing out your time and speaking to Republic Business. We will catch up with you once the budget is presented on 23rd of July, and we will have an at-length discussion about what are the things that Finance Minister is going to announce on 23rd of July. Thank you so much for sparing out time and speaking to Republic Business.
Thank you for having me. Yeah.